Welcome students. In this video you are going to learn iterative statements in Python. You know that program control flows through a program in three ways. First is sequential, second is selection, and third is iterative. You have already studied about selection and sequential flow in your previous lectures, and now you are going to learn iterative statements. Iterative statement mean repetition of a set of statements depending upon a condition test. So you are going to basically specify a condition over here, and till the time that condition remains true, the same set of statements are executed again and again, and as soon as the condition becomes false, the program control jumps out of that iterative statement. So till the time your condition is true, only till that time same set of statements are getting executed, and when the condition becomes false, you are not going to do any other thing. You are simply going to just terminate from that particular iterative statement. These statements are also called loops or looping statements. Talking about the kinds of loops, there are two types of loops. First is counting loops, second is conditional loop. Counting loops are the loops that repeat a certain number of times. So here you are going to run the loop only for the specified number of times, and how you specify the number of times, that will be clear to you when you will be studying counting loops in detail. Example of counting loop is for loop. Second is conditional loop. Conditional loops are the loops that repeat until a certain condition remains true, and after that it stops. So like I told you, you specify a condition, and as soon as the condition becomes false, you just terminate from the loop. But till the time that condition remains true, you just keep on repeating the same set of statements. Example of such a loop is while loop. So in this video you are basically going to learn the counting loop, that is for loop. So here is the syntax of for loop. You can see, first of all we write for, which is a keyword, then a variable name, any user defined name, then in is a keyword, then sequence. You already know what are the various sequences present in Python, like list, tuple, string, right? Then body of the loop. We will be discussing the elements of this for loop in detail in some time. So you can simply here see that this is the syntax. Okay. Now let us discuss each of the elements of this syntax in detail. So for is a keyword that marks the beginning of the for loop. Children, for is basically a compound statement, just like you had if and else statement. What is a compound statement? Compound statement is the one that begins with a keyword and ends. The compound statement is a statement that has two parts, header and body. The header begins with a keyword and ends with a colon, and then you have a set of statements in the body which are indented at the same level. Okay, so here also you can see that for is a keyword here. Okay, and then you can see the colon here, and then you have an indented body. So what is for loop? For loop is actually a compound statement. Clear? Then variable is any variable that will receive the values of the given sequence one at a time. In is the keyword, and sequence determines how many times the loop will be repeated. Now see, I told you that for is a counting loop. You have to specify how many times the loop has to do its work. So how you specify? By writing a sequence over here. Okay, this sequence indicates how many times this loop has to repeat its work. Now what happens? One item of this sequence is allotted to this variable at a time, and then for this value of variable name, body is executed. Then another, that is second value of this sequence, is allotted to this variable name. Then again the body is executed. In the same way, this loop runs for all the values of this sequence, and as soon as this sequence finishes, the control jumps to the loop else clause. Okay, so here you can see that sequence determines how many times the loop will be repeated, and variable is the variable that receives the values from this sequence. Now see what can be the possible values for this sequence. First is, sequence can be any sequence like list, tuple or string, or a range type object generated by range function. You will be studying about range function shortly because this is a new function for you, but list, tuple and string are already introduced to you in the previous chapter. Okay, so we'll see these things in detail later. So first of all, let us complete the syntax of for loop. Body of the loop indicates the statements to be executed repeatedly as long as there are elements in the given sequence. Then loop else clause. First of all children, this clause is optional. It is not mandatory. So only if required we use this clause, otherwise we simply skip it. And when does it get executed? This loop, this else clause, remember this is loop else clause. So this else is belonging to the loop, not to the if statement. You have studied in if else also, you used to have else. That was else of if, but here this else is loop else. Okay. So this particular else gets executed when all the values of this sequence are finished and you are going to just come out of the loop. Then you come to this clause and these statements are executed. If this is not specified, simply the program control jumps out of this for loop and starts to execute the remaining program. But if this is present, then after completing this sequence, the program control will come to this else clause and it will be executing these statements, and after that the for loop is going to be terminated. You are going to study about this loop else clause in detail later children, because the significance of this clause will be clear to you only after studying jump statements like your continue and break statements. So that is a later topic, so we will discuss it in detail there only. Now let us see what is range function. There are two elements of the for loop which are often required whenever you are working with this for loop. Okay, so first is range function. Range is a built-in function that generates and returns an immutable sequence type containing a list of numbers between start stop at the specified step. Now see, this is a function in which you pass three arguments. First is start. Basically this function will produce a range of values. You have to specify the starting point, ending point and the step. Out of these three arguments, start and step are optional and they have their default values. So if you don't specify their value, they are going to work with their default values, and if you specify their values, then they work according to the values that you have provided. So stop is mandatory. You have to specify this argument. You can skip start and step. Now starting from this value till this value at this specified step, the range of values is generated, and that particular sequence which is generated is immutable sequence. You can't change its elements in place. Okay, and then that sequence is returned. But remember, the value which you specify for stop is not included, it is excluded. So if suppose you have given range 5, 10, 2, then 5 is the value of start, then 10 is the value for stop and 2 is the value for step. So here the values are going to be generated from 5 to 10, but 10 will not be included at the step of 2. Okay, so this is how it works. It will be clear to you when we see some examples. But one very important point about range function I want to clarify over here. In your book children, it is written that range function returns a list type object, but it is not. Range function returns a range type object, and see here I have illustrated it with the help of this screenshot. Here you can see that in the range function I have passed 5. So I am only passing the value for stop. Therefore, start and step are going to take their default values, that is 0 and 1 respectively. So see what it has returned, range 0, 5. It has not returned any list. It has simply returned range. And in this step, see, I have shown you what it is returning, type range. You know that type function is used to determine what kind of value is returned. So type range 5 is returning you class range. This proves that this function does not return a list. It returns a range type object, and this range type object is immutable also. Lists are mutable, but range type object is immutable. You won't be able to change its element. I'll show this thing to you in some time. And see here, when I print a, what is getting printed? 0 to 7. See, in this line I have written a is equal to range 7. So it is going to produce a range type object which will be assigned to a, and then a, when printed, it gives you like this type of result. Then type A is giving you range, then list range 7. What I am doing here? See, the result is not in the form of a list or tuple. If you want to convert it into list or tuple, you can simply write it this way, list then range 7. So this function will convert this range into list and show you the result. So when 7 is passed, 0 to 6 at the step of 1 are generated, and you can see the result in the form of list. If you want to convert it into tuple, then you can see you can do it in the tuple also. So tuple range 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 were generated, kept in a tuple, and that tuple was returned. Then if you check the value of type X, you can see it is tuple. Clear? Now here I am illustrating that range function, the sequence that it returns is immutable. That is what is going to be illustrated here. See, first of all I have written S is equal to range 10. So 0 to 9 are the values. Then when you print S2, it is printing the value S2. But when you try to change the value of S2, it will give you error saying range object does not support item assignment. This means that the value returned by, the sequence returned by range function is immutable. You can't change its value in place. Clear? Now let us see what values are produced by range. If 5 is passed, if 5 is passed here, so you are getting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because step is 1 and 0 is the starting point. Then 10, 25. It is returning 10 to 24 at the step of 1, because 10 is the starting point, 25 is the stopping point, which will not be included, and step is by default 1. Then 10, 25, 2. So 10 to 25 values will be generated, but at the step of 2. So 10, 12, 14, but 25 will not be included. Then 10, 25, 5. What is happening here? Step is 5. So 10, 15, 20. 25 is not generated because 25 is the upper limit which is not included. Then you can specify negative step also. So in that case, generally your lower limit is a higher value and upper limit is lower value, because you have to move with the negative step. Okay. So that is why 9, 3, minus 1 is generating 9 to 4. 3 is not included and step is minus 1. Okay. In the same way you can see here step is minus 2. So 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. 1 is not included. Then again see here 10, 1, minus 1. So what is happening here? 10 to 1. 1 will not be included. Step is minus 1. Okay. Now see here. If in case you specify the step positive but the upper limit is less as compared to lower limit, then you are not going to get error. You are going to get an empty list. So if nothing is lying between the range that you have specified, it will simply give you empty list. You can see here also, here lower limit is small and upper limit is big, but step is minus 3. So again it is going to give you an empty string, empty list. Why? Because step is negative but you are moving from a smaller value to a large value, so nothing will be there in the range. So answer is empty list. Then another important element is membership operator, which you have already studied earlier. These operators are used to check for the existence of first operand in the second operand, and it returns a boolean value. So if the first operand is existing in the second operand, it will give you true, otherwise it will give you false. There are two membership operators, in and not in. In is used to search for the first operand in the second operand, and if it is found, it returns true, otherwise it returns false. Syntax is first operand in second operand. So first operand can be of any data type. Second operand must be a sequence. This you already know from the previous chapter. So second operand must be a sequence type, whether it is list or tuple or string, but first operand can be of any type. In the same way, not in operator searches for the first operand in the second operand, and if it is not found, then it returns true, otherwise it returns false. Syntax is same, first operand not in second operand. First operand can be of any type, but second operand must be a sequence. Let us see certain examples. A in Ananya. So here small a is present in Ananya or not? Yes, it is. So it is returning true. Okay. See the here the second operand is a string and first operand is also string. In this case also both the operands are string, so it is searching for string 2 in ABC 1 2 3. You know that all the elements of a string are individually string only. So string 2 is present in ABC 1 2 3, so it is returning true. But when string true is found in this list is again a sequence. So string 2 is found in this list? No. So it is returning false. Then 45 of integer type is existing in this tuple or not? Yes, it is. So returning true. Then let us see not in operator. Ash not in trash. So it is saying that ASH is not present in trash, but it is present, so it is returning false. Then 20 not in this list. Yes, it is not in this list, so it is returning true. Then tuple 2 comma 4. See, any kind of value you can give for the first operand, but second operand has to be a sequence. So tuple 2 comma 4 is not in this list. This is false, so it returns false. So these are the two important elements required for the working of for loop. And children, here I will just finish this particular video, and in the next video I am going to continue this topic. Thank you so much.